we're talking about symbolic play, symbolic thought, language, literacy, and how that plays into kids in their preschool years. So sociodramatic, okay, sociodramatic play really develops, takes off during the preschool years, where kids are playing and talking and doing things that are kind of made up. They're abstract. They're engaging. They're playing. They're doing all kinds of things. So some typical things here that you can see that come up. Kids make believe. They create things in terms of action situations, different kinds of social interactions happening. They have a lot of verbalization. Doesn't necessarily mean it's correct or that they're actually engaged in conversation, but that just there's a lot of verbalization going on between new words and doing a variety of things. There definitely this sociodramatic play helps to influence language development and also cognitive development because they are engaging in a lot of different things. They are hearing new languages. They're learning new vocabulary. So there's a lot of stuff going on that helps um, uh, play into the development of this sociodramatic play. So of course, there's going to be variations in that for kids. Okay, here it talks about kids or children from low socioeconomic statuses or from non-technical societies often play less often and less well. Okay, so basically, research is telling us that tools and procedures in terms of research may be culturally biased or culturally insensitive, and kids from low socioeconomic statuses or that are from non-technological societies engage in non-toy play. They don't have the manipulatives, the toys, the materials to play. And pretend play is not always easy to observe. Okay, so children can often engage in play work while doing chores. They might be playing, if they're without a toy, they might be talking to themselves and not engaging with somebody else and pretending to do things. So we can't always observe that play when we are watching them. Okay, so we have to pay attention to that. If you see a child off by themselves, or maybe not playing with only playing with one thing or not playing with anything, but you do see them kind of like their lips moving or talking, you want to maybe interject, ask questions to what they're doing, those types of things, just to get a sense of if they are engaging in that sociodramatic play. The next few slides here talk about how we can facilitate kids and their play and their sociodramatic play if they have special needs. So visual impairment here. Preschoolers with visual impairments perform fewer make-believe attachments and are less imaginative than their peers. So we can help kids identify appropriate props to use touch, rehearse new toys with them, and assist the kids in interpreting the presence of their peers. Okay, so just helping those with visual impairments to understand a little bit is what they might be playing with, and also what their peers are at, what their peers might be doing as well. So this is not something that we would be constantly be doing, but it would be something that we engage with the kids from time to time, especially with the introduction of a new toy, new activity, those types of things. Kids with hearing impairment symbolize less with objects and participate less often in joint make-believe. Okay, so with kids with hearing impairments, things we can do help them communicate their play ideas and interpret others' play ideas, because again, they may not always be hearing or understanding what is happening if they are not able to obviously hear all the stuff that their peers are talking about. Cognitive disabilities. Kids with cognitive disabilities are very similar to the other kids with typically developing children who are several years younger. So they're just not at the level of their peers. They're typically behind a little bit in regards to where their peers are playing at. What we can do with those kids or for those kids, help them learn how to join their peers, like engage in a group appropriately and correctly. Suggest things they can do or roles that they can take on in make-believe or made-up situations, and help interpret any make-believe situations for those kids. Children with autism typically engage in very little make-believe, just because it's difficulty to form. We talked about theories of the mind previously. It's difficult for them to form that that component, to come up with something that is not true, or to engage and pretend a little bit. We can encourage and teach play skills with kids, and try to intervene as much as possible. Functional play within social play settings is something that we can encourage and help with. Help the other kids in the class to assist the child with autism in playing and engaging, and coming up with ideas for them, roles, etc. So, really getting the other kids to help engage the students with special needs is a great way to help those kids develop and grow and be included in what they're doing in the class. So, a little bit of limited research in regards to sociodramatic play in the brain, which is fine. Just means that there's more that needs to be done in regards to observing kids and seeing their reaction and what the brain looks like in regards to that. As we jump into like language development component here, looking at phonological development, most preschoolers will just know the rules of the language of their main language, the language that's spoken at home the most. If we're talking about English here, they can clearly pronounce all the sounds in their languages, but there are some pattern differences between boys and girls. Typically, these letters here develop early, the P, B, M, and K. And then the later ones are the ones that are a little bit more difficult. Of course, the Z, the, blah, squa, and tr sounds that are a little bit more difficult to pronounce. Being unable to imitate sounds can be an issue or a challenge phonologically for preschoolers. And also just because of maybe their lack of ability to control how sounds come out, what they are doing with their mouth, their tongue, those types of things. Making unpredictable substitutions for sounds they cannot produce, so it just comes out as something. If you ever worked with a child or somebody before, and they can't say a certain letter, something that pops into my mind is when kids are talking about, like, or you say, like, no, it's ball, and they go tall, or some other letter, they just can't put them together. For example, that would be an example of that. And then single sound disfluences, with or without struggling behavior. Again, meaning that there's a certain sound that they just cannot produce quite yet, and they need to practice through that a little bit more. Dual language learners. Children often use the sounds of one language to speak a second language, usually the one most often used in the home. So this would be, or examples of this could be, that if they are learning Lakota or Spanish or some other language at home, that's their main language, and they come to school, a school that is a predominantly English speaking school, that could be difficult for them, as they would often, of course, be bouncing sounds and words in between, and vice versa. If a child is trying to learn a different language at school, and of course at home it's different, than I guess that's the same way. But I think a lot about, like, kids learning to speak Lakota at school or different places, if that's important. Then English is spoken at home. But dual language, you're going to flip back and forth with sounds and words, and all different types of stuff. Semantic development is very rapid during the preschool years, especially with the social interaction, providing cues to word meanings and when to use them, etc. How they're exposed, when they're exposed to that. So children will take these new words, they'll make overgeneralization errors, they'll make over restriction errors, which is fine. They just need some time in practicing those words and what they mean, their understanding, when to use them. So kids with special needs might have trouble retrieving words or learning new meanings, as it's going to take them a little bit longer to understand them, maybe, and to use them, and be comfortable with them. So for dual language learners, bilingual preschoolers differentiate one big mental dictionary into two distinct lexicons. So they rely on environmental clues to differentiate, and often will begin to request two words for the same concept. Okay, languages not having an equivalent word for the same type of thing and they can be very different. So If you have dual language learners, it's a process in all these different aspects of language for dual language learners, and they're gonna make mistakes. They're going to it's going to take them a little maybe longer to develop a clear understanding of both languages, but once they get to that point, they'll be much stronger in both languages development. Development of syntax. Sentences, of course, grow longer and develop more during the preschool years, and begin to use morpheme. They combine words appropriately and correctly, using the correct rules. Kids, there is some atypical development. Kids with hearing or children with hearing impairments will struggle with that a little bit. And children, again, learning two languages, we'll use rules for one and the other, and kind of code switch, as they call it, right? And maybe confuse some of the rules for that. But again, as they grow and develop and learn both, will become much stronger down the road. Pragmatic skills, children learn the cultural rules for being polite, respectful, all those different components. Preschoolers use appropriately, especially when the partner or their peers have higher status. They understand that a little bit more. Speaking so the listener understands, in terms of a conversation, monologue, visiting with adults and with peers as well. They're picking that up, how to take turns, how to engage in a group, how to ask to join a group appropriately, how to be talkative, when to be quiet. So there's all kinds of stuff that goes on with the pragmatic skills, because there's a ton of social interaction, of course, in preschool. So again, children with hearing impairments or children with autism, they may know the rules, but they may not be engaging in what those social kind of cues and components are. And children with autism may not be engaging as well. So it just kind of depends, on the situation, where their needs are at, or how severe their hearing impairment is, or what spectrum they're at on the autism with autism. So it's going to vary with each of those depending upon the need. So in regards to pragmatic skills, cultures are going to be different. Families are going to be different, right? So some cultures encourage and families encourage collective conversation. Some expect kids to be silent, seen and not heard, for example. Some cultures communicate with more physical contact or stand very close. Some see eye contact as a sign of disrespect. So there's lots of variations within these pragmatic skills. We have to be aware of that. Not that we have to know every culture's pragmatic skill, but we need to know our students, and we need to know a little bit of their family background if possible, before we introduce a specific skill. Right? The one you hear the most about is eye contact. Right? Some people are very eye contact is very important to them. You look at me when I'm talking to you, type thing. And again, that some places that is a sign of disrespect. I don't know of too many people that demand that, but if that's something that you do, or that you would see, I would be very hesitant to require a child, especially a young child, to look you in the eye when you are talking to them, especially if it's a discipline type situation. So just know that different cultures have different pragmatic skills in regards to engagement, especially for kids, and to try to follow them as much as we know about that. So. Bilingual preschoolers seem to enhance language development for all children in both languages. Again, initially, this will be a little bit difficult for the child to pick up a new language, especially if they've learned a different one right away. But the younger you learn or work to learn multiple languages, the better you are in both of them down the road. So yeah, it's again, a struggle, probably preschool and earlier, but down the road, it's going to be beneficial for them. In regards to writing, during preschool years, children's writing comes to look more and more like adult print as time passes. Letters connected with sounds and messages, letters standing for whole words or symbols. So of course it takes some time, the spelling, all kinds of stuff. So that's just in the development component in regards to preschool, and is something again that's important to look at, to maybe work on, but not that kids will be writing obviously fluently in this time period. Shared reading, and focusing on print in the environment will help develop literacy skills. So looking at different stages of shared book reading, belief that words come from the pictures, awareness that the story comes from the text, memorizing the text and reciting it, mapping the story to the print. So that's the process, right, for kids. They think that when they look at a picture book, that the words come from that picture book. Then they understand as teachers, we go through it. We might be pointing to the text. We're talking about specific words. They're starting to understand it. Then they start to memorize it if we do it over and over, and then they connect those words, that story, to the pictures in the book. Phonemic awareness, preschoolers can learn to map sounds to letters, of course, and kids have more difficulty in connecting these. Again, if they're bilingual and learning more than one language, or they're from a lower socioeconomic status background, okay, or come from poverty. So this can be a difficult component, not always, of course, but we may need to work a little bit more with those kids with that low SES background. Early literacy is very important, right? As preschools or early childhood teachers, we definitely want to encourage early literacy in our classrooms and with our families. Okay, so reading to children daily, super important. Creating print-rich environments that provide opportunities for early reading and writing. Okay, doesn't necessarily mean that writing has to be perfect, has to be accurate, that we have to grade everything, that we have to review it, provide feedback. Sometimes it's just an opportunity for kids to write, to practice, even if it's wrong, for kids to look at a book, try to read, even if it's wrong, even if they're making it up. But we want to expose them to that as much as possible. Planning games, group activities that teach kids about phonemic awareness, alphabet knowledge, those are important. And then engaging children in story writing, and invented spelling. Okay, again, they create their own spelling. They don't have to know how to spell everything accurately. They take a best guess. This doesn't connect to preschool, but we talk about like kinder speak or kinder writing, where they just write out a story as they think it sounds. They don't and looks, and they put it up there, and then underneath later we write the correct spelling or the correct word for the student, and they can go back and read it and connect it and understand the differences between that. So those things, the writing and invented spelling is important to promote writing for preschoolers as well as kindergartners, etc. So we know that not all kids will come to preschool with the same knowledge of print, same knowledge of literacy. And so we have variations culturally, as well as within families, and within different socioeconomic backgrounds as well. So some kids never learn to read and write. I don't know if you will, in some cultures, I don't know if we will, necessarily be exposed to that here, but that's a possibility. Storytelling is favored over story reading, so there's not necessarily a book, but there's just a story that is being shared. And in some cultures, parents are not expected to teach or help children practice literacy skills. That's the job of somebody else or the school or whatever that might be. So again, not that these are some of these are that you might be exposed to, but just be aware that that is some things that do happen out there. Language and literacy delays are typically addressed by speech or language pathologists, which is why it's important that we try to promote early screening for young children, preschool and below, that they can, if there is a child with a speech issue or a language delay, the earlier we can work with them, the better chance there is that students will that delay will go away at some point. So so if we notice that in our our classroom, whether it's preschool or lower elementary, we want to work with the parents to get them screened or tested so that possibly they can work with the speech or language pathologist. So things like, as you see here, object labeling activities, lap reading, conversations that model correct use of words, turn-taking games, direct teaching, targeted speech sounds, all kinds of good stuff here with that. So language delay, a fair number of kids have it, and it's just, again, something that can be worked on and corrected for a majority of the kids. Okay, so that is